If you're an American NBA fan, the name Vasilije Micic doesn't hold much weight. He's a 30-year-old sophomore playing for one of the worst teams in the NBA. Why would you care? Unless you're a European basketball fan. Then you'll know Vasilije Micic to be a wizard. He can pass.
You'll fancy this, crosses him up, gets by him, behind the back feed, up strong on the reverse finish.
He can score.
What a finish from Vasilije Micic!
He can hit big shots in the big moment.
Micic keeps the ball in his hands. Clock is running out. Micic rises. If it goes, he'll win it! Vasilije Micic with the troika!
And most of all, he can make your jaw drop.
Deep into the shot clock, Vasilije Micic has used his dribble. He needs a receiver here. He's got to pull the trigger. Oh, ho, ho, ho!
Vasilije Micic is one of the best EuroLeague players of his generation, and last summer he decided to test himself against the best of the best in the NBA. He arrived as a nobody. His international accolades and accomplishments counted for nothing. No one cared who he was or what he did. And his NBA career has been full of ups and downs. Things started off okay, went really good, and now they're really bad. If you watch till the end of this video, you'll realise that none of this makes any sense. And a lot of people are actually speculating that he might be sabotaging his own career for a few reasons we're about to talk about. A quick origin story is important to understand, so pay attention. Vasilije Micic is a Serbian combo guard who started playing basketball with Mega Basket in his home country. As a youngster, Micic was one of two young prospects on his team that were hyped up to be potential second round picks in the NBA draft. The other guy you might have heard of. He's only a 3-time NBA MVP. The two players were both drafted in the 2014 NBA draft. Jokic was selected with the 41st pick by the Denver Nuggets, and the rest is history. Micic was taken by the 76ers, but unlike his longtime friend who went on to become undeniably the greatest second round pick in NBA history, Micic's path was completely different. The 76ers were tanking, so they stashed him overseas with no intention of ever bringing him over. Now, because of the way NBA rookie contracts work, despite being drafted a decade ago, the team that drafted him still owns his rights. So even if, let's say, the Nuggets, who were interested in signing him, they wouldn't be able to get him unless they traded for his rights. So Micic was in a unique situation where he was kind of stuck and wasn't in control of his NBA destiny. The team that drafted him didn't want him, but they also weren't willing to waive him to allow him to sign somewhere else. So he did the only logical thing he could do in that situation, and that's work his way up the European ladder. He went from Germany to Serbia, Lithuania, bouncing from team to team trying to find his place, until eventually finding his home in Turkey. And it was while playing for Anadolu Efes under the legendary coach Elgin Ataman where Vasilije Micic became the world's best player outside of the NBA. Micic helped form a dynasty, winning 2 EuroLeague championships, including a 23-point performance against Real Madrid in the final to go back-to-back. He did this for a club that had never won a European title. He was MVP of the Final Four both times, was the EuroLeague's leading scorer averaging 18.2 points per game, and was MVP of the EuroLeague in 2021. These performances caught the attention of the OKC Thunder, who had acquired his draft rights in a trade. And once the Thunder transformed from a rebuilding team to a serious competitor in the West, they decided that a veteran of Micic's caliber could help them. So finally, at age 29 years old in summer 2023, Vasilije Micic joined the NBA, signing a 3-year deal worth $23 million with the Thunder. When Micic joined OKC, fans were excited. On paper, he seemed like the perfect vet that could come in and control the second unit when the starters go to the bench. A pass-first guy who could help mentor and develop these young players, and also with his experience playing meaningful competitive basketball, they thought he'd be a real asset when the game slows down in the postseason. The problem was the OKC Thunder were just too talented. Yes, people were optimistic going into the season, but nobody expected them to be the #1 seed in the West. And because they had so much depth, Micic never really got a chance. More often than not, he didn't play, featuring in just 30 games, playing around 12 minutes a night. In the first 20 games, he DNP'd 12 times. It wasn't until around the new year that he started to be included more, and the main reason for that is because the Thunder were looking to move him at the trade deadline. And he wasn't the only one. Trey Mann, Bertans and Pokusevski were all once guys considered key parts of what they were building in OKC. They found themselves in the same situation as Micic. You simply simply cannot play everybody, and they just had so many guys on the team that can play and be difference makers. And that's why they were all packaged together at the trade deadline and were sent to Charlotte in a package deal that was centered around Gordon Hayward. And by the way, the Hornets won that trade. Now this move completely changed Micic's career. One minute he was playing for a contending team in the West, and then suddenly was sent to play for a tanking team in the East. But it seemed like this change of scenery was exactly what Micic needed. Instead of wasting away warming the bench on a good team, playing for a bad team gave him the opportunity to establish himself as an NBA player, and at first that's what he did, because Vasilije Micic's Charlotte Hornets debut had the whole of North Carolina thinking they'd just won the jackpot.
Micic is a rookie in the NBA, but he's got a ton of experience. He is 30 years of age. Hornets lead by 4. Micic finds Miles! Micic. Oh my goodness! I love it. Finds Micic. Bottom of the wall. That's how they do it in Serbia. Watching the play, Conchar goes right around. Oh my goodness! What a pass! Play basketball.
Micic finished the game with 18 points and 9 assists, and for the first time in the NBA, he was having fun and looking like the MVP we saw from his time in Europe. But that wasn't even his best game. Check this out.
Pokuševski to his fellow Serb. I love it. The Serbian connection. Micic finds Prentice. Gets it over to Micic. And Vasilije Micic, I'm telling you, he is a changed man. Micic, unbelievable.
And that was a really good move. Slithered right through that.
Micic. Oh my goodness.
Really good skill for a 19-year-old.
Micic. Oh, Miles.
Vasilije Micic was given the green light by Steve Clifford in Charlotte, and with starting point guard LaMelo Ball out with injury, he was given the keys to run the show and was a big reason that the new-look Hornets finished the season stronger than they started it. Micic looked like a completely different player. In the 30 games with the Thunder, he averaged just 3.3 points, 2.5 assists per game, and in just as many games with the Hornets, he increased his output to 10.8 points and 6.2 assists, shooting 43% from the field. And he continued this form going into the summer. Micic joined the Serbian national team for the Paris Olympics, reuniting with Nikola Jokic with one common goal in mind: to win a medal for their country. Serbia were one of the best teams in the Olympics, and Micic played a key role for their team. Their biggest test came against Team USA in the semi-final, and in one of the greatest basketball games in history, Micic had a solid game. 8 points, 3 assists, 2 rebounds, hit some big shots down the stretch, but despite Serbia leading by more than double digits in the fourth quarter, Team USA were inevitable and completed a historic comeback to deny Serbia of one of the greatest upsets in the history of the sport. Serbia could have and possibly would have won gold had they just kept it together in that fourth quarter, but they left Paris on a high note, as in the bronze medal game Serbia had their rematch of the 2023 FIBA World Cup final against the world champions. In that game it wasn't Nikola Jokic, it wasn't Bogdan Bogdanovic, but Vasilije Micic who was Serbia's leading scorer with 19 points on 5 of 10 shooting, securing a medal for his country, which they celebrated as if they'd won the championship. Vasilije Micic was at a very high point. He'd established himself as a solid NBA player and stepped up for his country on the sport's biggest stage. He returned to Charlotte expected to be a key piece. LaMelo Ball was returning, and Micic seemed like the perfect backup point guard to lead the second unit and keep the offense ticking. Unfortunately though, the Micic we saw in the first half of 2024 has looked unrecognizable since returning. Micic looked out of shape in training camp, a step slower than a few months ago, and he was one of the Hornets' worst players in preseason. He continued this poor form into the NBA season. In the season opener against Houston, he had 5 points going 2 of 9 from the field. He followed that up going 1 of 6 against the Hawks and then 0 of 3 in 9 minutes against Miami. He was so unplayably bad that Coach Lee had to completely drop him out of the rotation, and he has only featured in 2 of a possible 10 games since. When head coach Charles Lee was asked about Micic's disappearance in the media, his comments were a little suspicious and seemed to be covering up what's really going on.
Unfortunately, he hasn't been in our rotation, but it has not stopped him from being the ultimate professional, the ultimate teammate, and he continues to just bring the right attitude and mindset to our gym and to our team every game, talking to our players during timeouts about what he sees. He and I have had a couple sit-down conversations post-game and stuff, so I greatly appreciate everything that he's doing right now in a situation when he unfortunately is not playing.
Vasilije Micic this season is unrecognizable. The guy that was so effective for the Hornets last season doesn't look like an NBA player at all right now. And the drop-off is so significant that people are speculating that there's more to it. In the off-season, when interviewed, Micic had some interesting comments about the NBA when comparing it to Europe, which is interesting because things seem to be going so well for him at that point.
I settled myself so well in Europe. I just wanted that challenge, and so far it's going okay.
Was very obvious from his body language and attitude on the court that Micic doesn't want to be in Charlotte. His heart isn't in it, and people are coming up with all kind of theories. Some people are suggesting he wants to be cut, and with the way he's playing he probably deserves to be. But waiving Micic isn't so simple. He still has 2 years left on his contract, making $8 million a year. They owe him too much money to just let him leave for nothing. And with the way he's playing, he's not going to be spoiled for choice by NBA teams. The one NBA team that might be interested is the Denver Nuggets, and that's for one reason only: Nikola Jokic. As mentioned earlier, Micic and Jokic go way back. They have great chemistry whenever they suit up for the national team. They enjoy playing together, and it's no secret that Jokic has tried to push the Nuggets to sign his friend for years. There were rumours about a trade in the summer, and I think if Micic is going to end up anywhere else in the NBA, it's going to be Denver, as I think they're the only team that could find a role for him that he would be content with. We have to remember that Micic is a player that wants to compete. In EuroLeague he was competing for titles. For the Serbian national team he was competing for medals. When he agreed to join the Thunder, he was under the impression he'd be joining a competitive team. The Charlotte Hornets aren't and have never been that. And remember, he never agreed to join the Hornets, he was traded there against his will. Who knows, maybe if after 6 months he knew he'd end up in Charlotte, he might have just stayed where he was in Europe. Obviously everybody wants to play, and it's not an easy adjustment for somebody who's used to being the guy with the ball in their hands to suddenly be warming the bench. It's got to be even more frustrating when you're not competing for anything either. So I'd imagine if Micic is taking on a bench role, he wants to do it somewhere where his contribution will count for something. He'll be more than willing to sacrifice individual success if it comes with winning. What he won't be interested in is warming the bench for a team that is one LaMelo Ball injury away from ending up in the lottery again. Now it's possible the Nuggets make a move for him at the deadline. His contract is easily tradable, and with the way he's playing right now in Charlotte, it probably wouldn't take much to get him. I'm pretty sure the Hornets would be more than happy to part ways with him at this point. Nobody wants a disgruntled player, and they'll probably ask for minimal compensation in return. But what's also possible is that Micic's heart is no longer in the NBA and that he wants to return to Europe. We saw this summer with Sasha Vezenkov, the other EuroLeague MVP who also joined the NBA that same summer. He signed with the Sacramento Kings under the impression that he'd have a big role for a competitive team. That just didn't happen. Vezenkov failed to establish himself in Mike Brown's rotation, and he was shipped off to Toronto at the end of the season. Vezenkov had no intentions of playing with the Raptors and actually signed a historic deal with his former club Olympiacos while still being under contract in the NBA. He essentially forced Toronto's hands to agree to a buyout, and now Vezenkov is back in Europe. He's reprised his role at Olympiacos and is not only one of the best players in EuroLeague again, but he's also making more money than he would in the NBA. Vasilije Micic no doubt sees this and is probably thinking to himself while not getting on the court in Charlotte that if he could return to Europe, be a star again, compete for titles and individual awards, while also getting paid more in Europe than he would in the NBA, then he'd probably prefer that. So the idea that he might be sabotaging his own career to try and make this move happen is actually very possible. The question we've got to ask is, if he returns to Europe, where would he go? Unlike Vezenkov and Olympiacos that was so seamless it almost seemed like Sasha never left, the Anadolu Efes dynasty is over. The whole core of that championship winning team is gone. Coach Elgin Ataman is now at Panathinaikos building something special there. It's a completely different team from what was so successful in the early 2020s. Now the possibility of Micic rejoining his former coach and playing at Panathinaikos has been discussed. The only problem is that power stacked with guards. Kostas Lukas was Final Four MVP. Kendrick Nunn is a superstar, and they just signed Lorenzo Brown this summer. He's considered one of the best best guards in EuroLeague, so while they would probably be happy to have him on their team, it's unlikely that Panathinaikos break the bank and offer him a historic deal worth 20 million euros like Vezenkov got, simply because they don't need him. Now, two EuroLeague teams that could be a real possibility are the two biggest clubs in the continent. Real Madrid and Barcelona are both reportedly monitoring his situation, hoping to sign the former MVP. Real Madrid last season lost in the championship game, failing to repeat as EuroLeague champions, and are seeking redemption this season. And adding Vasilije Micic alongside Campazzo would give them one of the best backcourts in all of EuroLeague. Micic has also never played in the Liga ACB, which is considered the best domestic league outside of the NBA, so that would no doubt be an interesting challenge for him, and by joining Madrid he'd know that he's positioning himself to compete for European titles again. Their arch rivals Barcelona is also a massive possibility too. We've seen before that the Catalan giants are willing to spend big to bring players over from the NBA, with Nikola Jokic signing back in 2019 being the perfect example. With Ricky Rubio leaving the team in the summer and Laprovitola facing a season-ending injury, Barca lack depth at the most important position, so bringing in Micic to play alongside Jabari Parker, Kevin Punter and other star players like Willy Hernan Gomez, Jan Vesely and Satoransky, that would make them on paper one of the strongest teams in EuroLeague and increase their chances of winning the European title, something they've been desperately trying to accomplish since they last won over a decade ago. That's just two examples, but if Vasilije Micic does become available, every serious top team in EuroLeague would make an effort to sign him. This is one of the top players, and the longer things stay the way they are in Charlotte, the higher chance we see Micic return home. I do think that his return to EuroLeague is inevitable at some point. The only question is whether or not he has another NBA pit stop in him before coming back. I do think that given his situation in both OKC and Charlotte, it would likely be a Denver or bust situation for him in the NBA, and if the right opportunity presents itself, I think he'd jump at the opportunity to reprise his role in EuroLeague and become one of the best players outside of the NBA again, while he's still in the prime of his career. Speaking of best players outside the NBA, there was another EuroLeague MVP that we mentioned in this video, who if you're still here, you probably want to hear more about. So click the box in the middle of your screen and go watch the story of Sasha Vezenkov and why his NBA career wasn't nearly as successful as his time in Europe. You'll enjoy that video, leave a like here, subscribe to the channel, and on that note, it's DKM signing out until next time, and peace.